Welcome back to Siouxland Senior Planning. Sorry about missing our episode last week. We had some problems with our recording equipment, so we weren't able to put the episode together. We've got that problem fixed though, so today we're back and ready to talk about basis. Specifically today, we're going to answer the question, what is a step up in basis? This is a question that has come up several times during client meetings over the last several weeks, and so I wanted to make sure we touched on it on the program. Today, we're going to make sure you have an idea of what is basis. We're going to help you understand the difference between a carryover basis and adjusted basis. And we should be able to, at the end of the episode, have an idea of why basis and basis stepped up might be important in an elder law and estate planning context. Basis is an important concept in income tax parlance because it's the foundation for the capital gains tax. Capital gains taxes being the thing that people pay when they sell an asset that may have appreciated, and so they sell it for more than what they paid for it. And that is where we get the idea of basis. Basis is essentially what you put into an investment. It doesn't have to be stocks or some kind of ownership of a company. An investment can be real estate or a vehicle or a piece of equipment. And basis is, think of it like the purchase price. So if you purchase a piece of real estate for $100,000, your basis is $100,000. If you add value to that property, maybe you build a new structure on that property and you put an additional $50,000 into that structure. Now you've got a basis starting with $100,000, but you've added to that up to a number more like $150,000. So your basis is what you've purchased the property for, and it's what you put into the property. When a person gives an asset away, say you give your home to your children or to a child, that gift has what we call a carryover basis. So it doesn't get a zero because that's what your child paid for the basis. It's not zero. Instead, their basis is what your basis was. So in my example of $150,000 of property that has a basis of $150,000, the child's basis, if you gift that to the child, carries over from you, and so their basis is now $150,000. When you pass away and you leave that asset to that child takes what we call a stepped up basis. So if you purchased the property for a $100,000 purchase price, you added to it by building a structure and added $50,000 of additional basis. Now your basis, your starting point, was $150,000. If you held on to that property for another 5 or 10 or 20 years and the property appreciates in value, let's say it doubles in value by the time you pass away to $300,000. Now, when your child inherits that property from you, they take what's generally known as a stepped up or adjusted basis in the property. Their basis becomes what its fair market value was as of your date of death. So it appreciated in value up to $300,000 and became a basis for them, stepped up or adjusted to $300,000. So now the question behind all of this is, why does basis matter? And it goes back to that idea of capital gains taxes. The reason we want to make sure that we know whether a person receives an adjusted basis or a stepped up basis is because it tells us when they sell that property how much of the sale should be treated as income, and the IRS then taxes that income as capital gains. So if the basis were $150,000 and you sold that property before you died for $300,000, well, then your gain would be $150,000, the purchase price minus the basis. So that gain of $150,000 is then taxed to you as capital gains. If instead you didn't sell the property while you were living, but you waited until your death and passed that on to your child, that child could then turn around and sell the property themselves. that sale would potentially have a capital gains tax. And how we figure out the capital gains taxes by subtracting the sale price from the basis. Well, the basis got stepped up or adjusted when you passed away, and so your child's basis is now whatever the property was worth. It becomes the $300,000 because they inherited it from you. So when they sell that property, potentially for the fair market value of $300,000, their capital gains will be much less or even potentially zero, meaning that there's very little or even no income for calculating a capital gains tax. So the basis can be really, really important when it comes to how we report income after selling an asset. Why was that matter for estate planning or elder law purposes? Well, estate planning used to be all about estate taxes and avoiding estate taxes. In some states like Minnesota, for example, there is still a state estate tax. We don't worry about that so much here in Iowa because we don't have an estate tax. But even federally, where there is an estate tax, very few people end up having to pay it. So instead, we look at the income tax consequences of inheriting certain kinds of assets, and we try to do income tax planning that will help the children, the beneficiaries of an individual's estate, when they receive those things as an inheritance. So income tax planning has become a very important part of estate planning. And when we start thinking about whether or how you're going to receive something from a parent or other family member, we may be taking into consideration more of an income tax question than we might of an estate tax question. And that is why basis is important. And that's why we want to know whether or not you're going to receive a step up in basis as a result of receiving a piece of property. That's all we're going to cover this week. Thanks for listening. Remember that if you have a question you'd like to have us answer on the show, you can submit those questions by visiting the Sioux County Radio website and heading over to the Siouxland Senior Planning page, or by visiting our website at siouxlandseniorplanning.com/listener and submitting your question there. Thanks a lot, and we'll chat next week.